Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and this is the Positivity Hour, a partnership with the JCC and the Whole Being Institute. Today, we are going to be learning the vision behind the Certificate in Positive Psychology with Megan McDonough and Maria Sirois. Throughout the pandemic, the JCC has worked with the Whole Being Institute to provide free webinars to help our community skillfully navigate the COVID-19 crisis. Most of our presenters have been graduates of the Whole Being SIP program. Here's your chance to learn more about the 9-month Certificate in Whole Being Positive Psychology directly from the leaders of the Whole Being Institute. What was the vision behind SIP? Why was it started, and what does it mean to us today? Megan McDonough and Maria Sirois will discuss the science behind positive psychology and its impact on their careers, as well as why they designed the SIP program to include open discussion, peer groups, and a blended learning approach, as well as team teaching. I welcome to the call Megan and Maria. Megan is the CEO and co-founder of the Whole Being Institute, an educational organization teaching the science of human flourishing. With a degree in nuclear medicine, decades of leadership experience, and 25 years of teaching and practicing yoga, Megan combines intellectual understanding with an embodied approach to teaching and leading. She's an award-winning writer and author of 4 books on mindfulness, and her work focuses on helping people and organizations thrive. She's also one of the most generous professionals and people I know. Maria Sirois is a master teacher, facilitator, author, and co-founder of the Whole Being Institute. She is devoted to the science of well-being and the art of crafting a life and a work that embodies health, passion, and success. As a positive psychologist and consultant, she focuses on the resilience of the human spirit, particularly when under chronic stress, during significant transitions, and or feeling the shock of wholesale change. Known for her wisdom, authenticity, and humor, she brings a wealth of perspective from decades of study in the mind-body medicine and resilient disciplines. And for me, she is one of the most gracious storytellers I've ever encountered. Welcome, you guys. Thanks so much for coming. I wanted to, let me get back to you right here. I think you need to unmute yourself.
I'm here.
And I did want to mention today is Giving Tuesday, everybody. So our theme is We Are Your JCC, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we think this theme speaks to the place that we're in today. And our hope is that you will donate to our JCC to help support us in the future. There's also 2 events that are happening. There's a concert tonight with the infamous Paul Wolf at 5:30 and a Giving Tuesday bingo as well. So if you would join us for those events, and if you would help us by supporting Giving Tuesday, I can put a link in the chat. That would be amazing. So now, Megan, could you start us with a mindfulness moment?
I would love to, my dear friend. Good to be here with you. Hello, Maria. Always a pleasure to be with you and to be with all of you today. Happy belated Thanksgiving. I hope it was an absolute wonderful joy and that you partook in good food, even though this year was a little bit different than years past. So sit comfortably, whatever that looks like for you. You can close your eyes if you'd like, or just create a soft gaze. And I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and a big exhale. And as you release the air from your lungs, also consciously and deliberately release the moments that came before this one. Allowing yourself to fall into this moment fully and completely to the greatest extent you can. And perhaps even noticing if there is an echo left from your past actions. Send your attention all the way down to your toes, noticing the legs, the thighs, the hips, the whole length of the spine right up to the crown of the head. Feel the sleeves of your arms with your own attention. Be generous with your attention, focusing it on this moment, this self. What kind thing, what generous thing can you say about you right now, this experience right now? Giving yourself the gift of your own attention. And letting the aperture or the lens of that attention broaden out so that you pull into your awareness those causes and organizations and people that you feel passionate about, that you want to support, especially in this season of challenges and difficulty. Who do you want to give your gift of attention to? Wishing them well. And taking a nice deep breath in. Big exhale. Thank you for that. That was helpful for me as well. And I love to think, Caroline, when we think about Giving Tuesday, about first nourishing our own and giving back to ourselves, and then thinking about how is it that the sense of self is held and supported by organizations like the JCC for Giving Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out how to make myself on the spotlight so I can be there with you guys.
Oh.
Hang on one second.
I could tell you were doing something.
I was like, wait, I'm a little, wait a minute. Okay, hang on, you guys. Yeah, well, thank you for doing that. Zoom now allows us to have all three of us together, which is when we first started this, Megan, that wasn't the case, you know. And I think back on those first events when I was saying to you, I don't know how to do this at all, but I'm going to figure it out. And you said, okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. And the two organizations came together, and I really so appreciated that we were able to really sit on the back of your wings and help our organization not only ground and center, but take off and fly. And my reason for wanting to partner with the Whole Being Institute, everyone, was I knew from the studies after 9/11 that there was a lot of research around resilience and positive psychology and the impact of different ways to thrive. And I wasn't sure exactly what that was, but I wanted people in New York City and beyond to have access to that. Mm. And little did I know what a treasure chest would open up with the calls and also the certificate in positive psychology that I've been able to participate in. I'm sort of getting a little bit emotional about it because it's just been so amazing to be with both of you and your generosity and helping me help my community.
Caroline, I hold you in my heart. I feel your emotions, and I feel right back at you that this has been. Anyone else go through sort of a difficult time this last year as we think about COVID, you know, and having this community and this support and this organization it's been grounding to me. And I think one of the reasons why we thought about having today's session, which is going to be really sort of a low-key conversation in community about like, how did this come about? And by how this came about, not just this year, but in a bigger way, how do we think about resilience and the best that the human experience could be? So that you have an idea of, oh, okay, this started with COVID, but there's actually a bigger question that humans grapple with all the time. How do we live well? And when the stuff hits the fan, oh my goodness, we really need it then. So when Carolyn and I were looking at the schedule, sort of winding down this year, this weird year, we started thinking, okay, people probably want to know more about how the certificate brought all these people to you so that you could learn from them. And then some of you might want to go deeper into the tools themselves. So maybe the program would be of benefit for you as well. That's sort of context. And Maria,
Yeah.
Caroline, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say that what you both have taught me, and I wanted to know more, right? That positive psychology, Maria, you said, is a long game. But how did you find it, or how did it find you? You know, that's what I'm curious about. Is in addition to, and also the way that you've created the program, it's not your typical learning experience, right? It's not just where we're being lectured to. There's interactions and there's assignments and it's very holistic. So I was also curious about that. It's unlike anything that I've ever participated in. So as an educator, which I am, I was fascinated by just not only the operationally, but the structure of it. And then the personal story. And Maria, you've talked about how stories are what drive us, right? They're what help us create connection and meaning. So this might be for me, but I hope everybody else finds it fascinating as well.
All right, Megan, where ought we begin?
With you, my friend, over to you.
So often when I talk about the program, it's, in its structure, it's a multi-month, 8-9 month learning program where you learn online and we put everybody in small study groups. And so there's the dimension of learning in the Jewish world, the Sirois study group, a learning community. And then there's also the dimension of personal reflections, your own personal experience, and then a final project. I mean, there are many ways in which to enter the learning of the study of positive psychology, which is essentially the study of human beings at their best. But let's just take one thread. So I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing the thread of generosity that you all are reflecting back to the JCC and back to what Caroline and Megan have put together over the last 8 months. It turns out that we know from the research that generosity is one of the greatest virtues of humanity across race, age, time, gender, socioeconomic status, you name it. Wherever we look in the history of the universe, all peoples would like the future generation to be potent with generosity. It's one of the best examples of our humanity. Positive psychology science, our data helps us understand how do we live a more generous life without depleting ourselves. Has anybody ever depleted themselves by giving too much to others? Right. So there's a beautiful intersection between the territory of self-care and the territory of resilience and the territory of thriving. Another question that we ask in the field is, what might generosity look like in the harshest of moments? In other words, why be generous when we're trying to conserve all of our resources to fight the good fight or to protect ourselves or to armor up against disease, for example, right? Why be generous? Why reach out? Why go to that food bank? Why show up to deliver clothes? Why drive thousands of miles to fight a forest fire? And one of the compelling reasons is not just because we feel better about ourselves and we are contributive to humanity, but we know that generosity triggers a positive upward spiral in which we feel like life has more significance. And when we feel life has more significance, more meaning, we are likely to be more engaged in all areas of our life. So a simple act of investing in a character strength like generosity has this positive expansion effect, which brings us to a place where we experience thriving even in the hardest moments. And that's essentially what this study does. You can enter this certificate program wanting to be happier or more optimistic or less tired, or you want a professional sort of boost to your corporate life or your solopreneur life, or you're in a time of transition from loss to opportunity or from opportunity to new opportunity. It doesn't matter why you enter. We've got for you a course that is deep in story, in data, in practical tools, and the opportunity to ask the questions that will drive you toward a better living, even when life sucks. How's that for a technical term?
So I want to just build on Maria's points. Elise asked about, no, you don't have to be a psychologist or have an advanced degree to take it. It's open for everyone. I actually want to take a step back and sort of address the first question that Caroline asked about what brought me to this work. What's the story? I'm really fascinated about why people say yes to the program. And I have the great fortune of having many conversations with people thinking about taking the program. And first thing I ask them is like, where are you heading? What are you hoping for? Here's my story. Back in the 90s, I remember distinctly being in the office of my DuPont office where I worked professionally. And I remember that this was like a really good organization to work for. I worked with great people. They were doing good work. Everything about it was good. And yet I felt very acutely that something was missing, that there was something lacking that I needed to move towards. And I remember being in my office, I'm in front of my computer. And what do you do when you have a question and you don't know what to do? Who do you ask? Google, because Google knows everything.
I was like,
doesn't everybody go to Google? Like,
yes.
And so I'm sitting in front of my Google
God.
and then I'm going to type in, but I don't know what question to ask. What do you do when it seems like, you have a loving husband, you have kids, you have a good job, and yet there feels like this piece of yourself that's not being expressed, that you're not on the right path, that there's something more to be experienced. And so I'm sitting in front of my computer, I'm thinking, what is that thing? What do I type in? How to live a more fulfilled life? How to be more satisfied with my life? What is the next goal? So I found myself Googling and getting, I think I ended up buying a writing course. I bought this course. I bought that course. Because I didn't know really how to pose the question to myself of what am I looking for in this life? And on that day, when I didn't know when to enter into Google, I just was clear about one thing. And the clarity was that the yoga class that I was taking at that time, 25 years ago, was greatly impacting the way in which I viewed my everyday life. So for me, from a personal story standpoint, the yoga was my entry into this work of human flourishing. Because before that, I was in the healthcare system, and we know that the healthcare system is really about what's wrong in the human condition. It's about fixing what doesn't work. And I was not really interested in doing that. Yoga taught me a different way. So I started looking at yoga training, and I actually started my own business back in 2000. And then I had the good fortune of working with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar in Maria Sirois when we did the very first certificate in positive psychology. And it was then that I started to put a language around what I know many of you know intuitively, because it's what our grandmothers told us. Be grateful, be appreciative, be kind, look for strengths in people. And they sound like platitudes until you begin to study the deep research that's in each of those areas and what modern day science has been doing to better understand what do we do to flourish as humans. And when I had that experience of putting Western-based language through the lens of positive psychology to what I was embodying with my yoga practice, and quite frankly, what I yearned for personally, what I was looking to type into Google, now I would type in certificate in positive psychology, and hopefully Holbein Institute would pop up, and I would take that class. And from then on, it was both an integration of my personal dharma, my work in the world, as well as my professional calling of all the details of let me plan this and do that administrative task, all built around this deep longing and question about living into our highest and best.
Yeah, I was struck by something that you said, which is, in yoga, they say you can enter the yoga matrix from wherever you need to. But this idea that, in our healthcare system, that things are focused on what is wrong versus what is strong. And that positive psychology, and I was thinking about you, Maria, as a positive psychologist, from a therapeutic point of view, that the emphasis of the profession until Marty Seligman came around was really not on what was strong and how we thrive. And I wondered how you came to that. Also, I know that some people are asking for if there's a link for the program, so we can put that in
and
the chat.
I will put that in. I just will say, you do two good things today when you register, because we also give back to the JCC for everyone that registers for the program. So you should know that when you use this particular link, I identify it in the system as coming from JCC, and so they also get some funds to support their organization as well.
Which is amazing. You know, we talked about this, Megan, how we're creating a virtuous giving circle. So the Whole Being Institute is actually going to, if this is something that interests you and you, like me, wanted to take the course, then the Whole Being Institute will donate back part of your tuition to the JCC. So it just goes full circle. And again, but I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you, Maria, how, as a psychologist, you found this, or was it that way, or a different way?
So I entered graduate school with a longing to explore the intersection of spirituality and psychology, and in the mid-late 80s, there wasn't much of that available. Those two meaning-making systems were not integrated in any way formally. And I ended up choosing to do internships in settings where people were ill, because I figured that if people were facing life and death moments, they might be invested in both the sort of psychology, like how do I face this, and what do I do with my difficult thoughts and feelings, but also the spirituality, meaning how do I stay connected to what is larger than me, even when I'm facing this moment. And so I had the opportunity to spend a year working with kids facing cancers and other blood diseases, working with their families. And as you said, psychology at the time was really oriented toward what is fractured or faulted within us, and what is difficult to navigate internally and externally. And I noticed that there were some families who were losing their children, who their children were dying, who of course fell apart, but there were other families that actually grew, like became more loving, more thoughtful, more grounded, more generous and generative, and the children themselves. And I was fascinated by, what do they know? Because I had a sense that that's what it looks and feels like to be large inside oneself, even when life is extremely difficult. And that became an interest of mine, which is the study of resilience. And when positive psychology emerged like 30 years ago as a field of study, I thought, this is the language and the science that I have been longing for, which helps us name out loud and ask the questions that actually drive us toward growth, as opposed to the questions that help us hold steady. Both are important in difficult moments, but the combination of resilience research with positive psychology lens is what thriving means.
Beautiful. We did have a question in the chat about how does the theory of the selfish gene compare to generosity? And also, how does the human generosity match with chemical brain surges of pleasure, euphoria, locations in the brain? And this is from Dale. I don't know if you want to address that.
So I've never heard about the selfish gene. I'd be curious if you have a link to that. Megan, have you read anything about this?
I've heard it, but I have not, nothing I can speak to.
Yeah, we do know that of course neurochemistry matters, and that some of us are more easily triggered into states of generosity, like through the up-leveling of the hormone oxytocin, which is they call it the love or the cuddle hormone, which is where connection is most activated. And in states of high oxytocin, we are more likely to be generous. It's also, there's been some research done at UCal that says that when we are in a state of awakened empathy, we are more likely to be generous. So there is definitely a neurochemical and hormonal connection to how we behave in the world. One of the things, and Megan, maybe you can talk about Spire. One of the things that I love that Megan and Tal created as a model for moving forward is to see ourselves from the place of wholeness. We are not just our neurochemistry. It's important, but we are not just our neurochemistry, nor are we our history, right? So Megan, maybe you could talk to them a little bit about the Spire model.
Yeah, love to. Would it be okay, Caroline, if I shared some slides? I think I might.
Sure.
I'm getting some questions in the chat about private messages about the actual content of the course. So
Sure.
I'll look at Spire through the lens of like, why do people enter this program? What do they experience, the arc of the learning, and then what do they get when they leave? So I think if I were in your shoes, I would want to know, is this for me? Like, what would I fit in? Would I be able to do the work? What would I experience? And then what do I leave with? That's my plan. And Maria and Caroline do chime in at any point, especially, of course, Maria and I have been teaching this right from the very beginning. But Caroline is just taking it this year. So you will get two, different perspectives, and the student perspective, especially when it comes to the final project and some of the questions around that, would be really helpful. Caroline is actually going through her immersion this weekend. So,
so wish me luck, everybody. It's not
Yay.
that you need luck. It's that it's this massive hug, it's a massive hug.
So I just wanted to play with this idea, why people take, like, what is your placement what is your belongingness in this cohort of SIP? So I'll tell you, when we ask our alumni, why did you take this program? We could fit those answers into one of four categories. We call them the 4 T's, that either people are in transition, they want tools, they're in trouble, or they want to move towards something. Those are the 4 T's about the reason why people take the course. So if we look a little bit deeper in each of those, in transition, I was speaking with someone before the start of this webinar today, and they were talking about retiring. And in fact, I had a couple of calls this week with potential students who were also 2 years from retirement. They both happen to work in the school system. And many times when we're thinking about a transition, either you lost your job, you're thinking about retirement, maybe you have an empty nest. These are natural times of transition. And we can think of all of 2020 as a transition, right? Because people who are in SIP now are telling us that this program was very helpful with the transition of the pandemic on how they showed up every day. So when you have the transitional, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm no longer here, and I want to map that out, the certificate program is very helpful for a very relaxed approach to the next step without feeling the anxiety of, like I was in front of the computer, what should I type in? The other reason that people come through the certificate program is because they want tools. They're a coach, or they're a therapist, or they're a consultant, or they're a parent that wants to use the tools of positive psychology for themselves, for the people that is around them, for their professional growth. So you will get, as Caroline can attest to, plenty of tools to use. And you've actually learned quite a few of those tools during our positivity hour here. And you've seen a lot of the SIP alumni who have come back and shared with you some of the tools that they've learned, whether it's gratitude, whether it's positive emotions. You've heard a whole bunch of stuff through the tools that people learn in the program. The other reason that people choose to come through the certificate program is there's a difficulty that they're trying to address. We've had people in the class who have had spouses pass away, and they're trying to identify, who am I as a widower or widow? Who am I with this new cancer diagnosis? Or who am I when someone I love is sick or my child is struggling? How do I think about these times of great sadness or transition in a way that doesn't kill me, basically. It allows me still to have a vibrancy towards this life. This is probably the smallest segment of people who say, I want to move towards something else, towards something bigger and better. And I have a big view or plan. And I'm wanting to sort of plan that next step out. I want to move towards something aspirational in my life. I want to move from a corporate career into coaching. I want to move from this towards this vision. And so SIP answers that. That's the reason why people come into the program. Once they're in, just to give you a sense, because once you land in, it's not like, okay, learn this, check. Okay, learn that, check. It's more of, I think about, and this speaks to what Caroline was mentioning about the arc or the flow of the experience is such that we keep building and growing and expanding from, starting with module 1, which is whole being happiness. And as Maria suggested, this is where we first begin to understand the 5 dimensions of well-being, which are SPIRE. We really dive into, what does this sense of self mean? How do we construct it? And then how do we use SPIRE to elevate? And then how do we leave module 1 with this sense of an possible self in the future that we want to help cultivate? And then we move into module 2, which is an understanding of, what is this thing called happiness? It's not just a positive emotion. There's actually things like satisfaction with life, with meaning in life. So we put it into context as happiness is a feeling, happiness is using your strengths and satisfaction with life, and happiness is meaning and deeper purpose and calling in what you're doing and how you're living. Then we do an online immersion. And this is when we all come together as a cohort and really start diving into my ideal self statement, what I'm living into, in the context of other people in the group. So when Caroline came through the first immersion, it's when we broke people into small groups. So you get to have a cohort of 4 to 6 people that you will continue taking the course with, along with Maria and I and the faculty and staff. But these are people who, like, they're your learning pod, your study group. They really end up being longtime connections as well. And then what you want to do in module 4, we talk about habits, because it's not just about learning, it's also about behavior changes. What habits am I cultivating, and how do I want to move into a 30-day practice that supports me building new neural pathways, building new habits and behavior that bring me towards my aspirational view of the future. And because we don't live on an island, that there are actually other people who impact us, we have a whole module that talks about the importance of our social network, how that can elevate us and how it can exhaust us. So we talk specifically about really developing your social network, being connected with others, being in relationship with others in a way that is supportive to your experience. Module 6 is realizing dreams. This is where you'll actually begin to map out step by step what's important for you to reach towards, and then what steps need to happen to get you there. And that module is taught by Linda Wallace, who is not only a certificate in positive psychology graduate, not only a senior teaching assistant, but also the person who has developed our whole positive psychology coaching portfolio. She has extensive background as an executive in J&J, and has her MBA from Wharton. So she's a highly trained executive who has been so successful in coaching others how to reach their dreams. And so then you'll experience that in SIP. And maybe you take this one, Maria, this is your module.
So it turns out, no matter what drives you to enter the course during the length of the time, those 6 months that we're doing this study together, stuff is going to happen. And what we know to be true is that many of us, even when things are going very well, have things that we're concerned about, or things that we're hopeful for that we want to take advantage of. Resilience is about the capacity to adapt to difficult moments healthfully and grow into them in terms of understanding the hidden opportunities. So it's about developing perseverance, strength, really standing steady and strong and growing at the same time. And we introduced to you a model of resilience that has emerged in the last 15 years called post-traumatic growth, which is really the study of the human beings, like those families at the cancer center I saw, who actually grew even in the worst moments. Thanks, Megan.
Great. Oh, this is out of order, but that's okay. And then the last one is about, this is the last online module before the immersion. It's about, I call this the choice to lead. I know it's called choosing and realizing your best life, but I think if I were to rename it again, it would be the choice to lead, because what we're asking you to do as you finish up the program is to become a leader in your own life for yourself, for others, and for the world around you, to really think through the fact that, I've learned all this stuff. I'm actually a leader now in this, just by your example of how you live your life. So it's really about how you make choices going forward. And then the last immersion is another online immersion where we come together again, and it's where you present your final or forever project. And there was a question that came into me about the chat, how much time is there, putting this final project together? I want to talk first conceptually about how I think about the final projects. It's not for a grade. You don't get an A. You don't get, edited on your final project. The intent of doing the final project is that as adult learners, you actually learn best when you try and teach others. When you try and learn something for yourself and you have to dive in deeper because you're going to share that with someone else, it's the most expressive way that you can to learn about something in depth. So it's really a learning opportunity. We begin talking about the final project in module 5 and 6. So it's over a period of time, you're asked to choose your project, to hone that with the staff so you can talk to people about it. And when you present it, it's only a 20-minute presentation. So it's not like you're developing a whole curriculum for a year-long program. It's a 20-minute presentation about what you find personally compelling. And it is a challenge. Some people are very comfortable with it. Some people, it's a new experience. But either way, it's a growth opportunity for the students, and to really put a period at the end of the sentence for the competencies, knowledge, wisdom, and skill that you've grown into over this time. And Caroline, I'm not sure if you want to say anything else about the final project on that.
Yeah, my experience with the final project, both in interviewing everybody on the Positive Psychology Hour, where a lot of the presenters, these were their final projects, and in my own self, is that this begins a fascination with a particular aspect of the work that then becomes something that they activate in their own lives. I know for me, my final project is about hope in a hurry and activating the hope circuitry. And what that did was it answered a question that I had in myself when I was working so much with other people as a health and wellness professional, which is, how do I help someone when they are in despair, or when they are depressed, or when they are they're just at a standstill? And that had always puzzled me, right? And activating the hope circuitry is a way to do that, right? To understand that it's learned helplessness is a state of being frozen in a way, in fight, flight, freeze. And that one small action, as Don Tomasulo says, like washing a dish, or just going back to the basics of self-care, like, okay, I'm going to get up this morning, I'm going to take a shower, actually is the way back into being our vitality, right? So to me, my research on hope, it's like I'm hungry for it, right? And it feels like it's my forever project. It's like I'm actively searching about hope. I'm noticing hope. I'm looking at the research on that. I'm talking to people about it. And I think that's going to be lifelong. And to me, that's one of the hidden benefits of that program. I wouldn't have looked at it that way. I wouldn't have had access to that tool. And it's been profound. And I noticed that when I interview people about their final projects on the Positive Psychology Hour, that's very similar, that they have that same kind of like Yara with gratitude. She's still doing that, it's still feeding her. So that is unusual too. It almost is like the nugget that people grasp onto in their final project. I'm sure not always, but it impacts them. I was thinking about who's on our yoga laughter.
Mahesh is on here, yes.
Yes, and how that has influenced him. So that's what I've noticed. And I was also, I have you guys can comment on that if you notice that to be true, because of course I haven't done the immersion yet, so I don't know if my colleagues will feel the same way about it. But and there's a couple of questions in the chat about, do I receive a certificate at the end? That kind of stuff. And Mahesh is saying it's in our blood. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people, I want to add to that, Caroline, some people, the final project or forever project is really answering a practical question. We have a student now from Europe who is integrating positive psychology and tools into a training program that she's created for her company. And she entered the course with a desire to be a better provider of well-being on behalf of the employees at her organization, right? So some of us, come from this deep longing, like Caroline really wanted to know about hope, and another student really wanted to know about how do I provide practical tools to help people move forward. The beauty, I think, is that we're often surprised by how much richness there is in the program, that we feel like, oh my God, I wasn't even aware how this has completely informed how I want to move forward in my life until we get to that final project. So it's a beautiful integration of who you've been with who you are and who you might become. Yeah. I'm wondering if I could ask the alums, there are so many beautiful alums in the audience, if you wouldn't mind just throwing in the chat a sentence about what the sustaining positive impact has been for you from taking this course. That would be such a delicious gift.
That would be great. And actually, you could unmute yourself. I'd love to hear your voice as well. So Mahesh or...
Well, I'm noticing the time, Megan. I wonder if people want to unmute and ask questions.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. So let me change that. What I'm going to have to do, I'll have to change the settings, which I can do in just 2 seconds so that people can do that. And that might mean that you guys get muted again. So just so you know. All right, and then we can switch to let's see if we have anybody that's raising their hand.
Lois did ask about the time frame of the program. So while you're looking there, I'll just answer that. Lois, it's 9 modules, the first of which is self-directed. I usually say it's a 9-month program, but it actually could be shorter than that if you start in February. I have some students who have started this year. So it's a 9-module program. In each module, it's about a month long, except for the immersions. That's a number of days.
And so, I also have somebody in my pod that's taking it for the second time.
Yes.
Richard really felt like, this is time for me to review this. And he's doing another project. And it's been really rich for him and very gratifying for him to do it a second time. And so I just wanted to mention that too. Now, I think, Elaine, you wanted, so go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, first I have to say how wonderful it is to see Megan and Maria. Thank you it's wonderful. And thank you for the Lunch and Learns, because that has been so helpful during this time. So I really feel like I'm still taking the course with the Lunch and Learns. But in January, it'll be 5 years since I graduated from the program. And I guess as I look at the reasons why people take it, I guess it would be for tools for me. I'm a retired Philadelphia school teacher, and I always took positive psychology as an independent study. It was always something that interested me. But then when my Let Your Yoga Dance teacher, Mega, was a part of this SIP program, I thought this is the program for me, because it was incorporating my passion with positive psychology. And I just find that I put in the chat, take it. Everybody should take it. You don't have to have a reason to take it. It's a gift that will last you your whole life. And I just feel that I practice it every day. And I still am doing my 30-day challenge of morning rituals. It's still, I do my SIP check-in and my Spire check-in. And it's been a game changer for me, a life changer. And I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And did anyone else want to ask a question, or I'm just going into the gallery to see? You can just raise your hand or question if.
I have to say that this is a community for me. I mean, I can't think of a better kind of community. If there was a place to live where all of you lived and all the people from the Whole Being Institute lived, that's where I would live. And it permeates my whole life, the day by day. And I've been inspired. Someone else who just graduated, and I will keep doing that. And I incorporate it into my own life and my professional life as a studying specialist. It's just wonderful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Karen. And let me see if there's.
I wanted to add to that point of community, Karen, that some of you probably have a sneaking suspicion that there are people in your life who might be happier if they only knew how, or who might be more optimistic if they only knew how, or who might feel more confident in moving forward toward their goals and dreams. But we've run out of our own resources, and they don't seem to know how to move themselves forward. And one of the beautiful outcomes of participating in this program on your own behalf, your own well-being, your own education, your own growth, is that this stuff has a positive effect often on others. We learn to build communities, as Karen pointed to, of like-hearted and like-minded people who are seeking practical wisdom, like, what do I do when I wake up and I'm sad? What do I do when I wake up and I feel burdened by life? How do I create a day that's worth living even when that happens? And know that these practices and tools and perspectives are going to benefit you, and they're going to actually amplify your own ability to have influence, positive influence on others.
Rachel has a great question, and thank you for thinking of me as a naturally positive person. My dad used to call me Sunshine, so I think you have hit something spot on about that. Can you be a negative cynic and benefit as much from the course as someone who is naturally positive? I feel like Caroline is a naturally positive person already, for example. And although I was really taken by Maria's first Lunch and Learn, where she said she was not naturally positive and had to work at it. And that's one of the things that actually surprised me so much, is that, I mean, during COVID, there was a lot of fear for me, and still is, and how I was surprised by how many skills I learned to manage and navigate catastrophic thinking, Maria, which was in part of one of your sessions. So I wonder if you can talk about that. And I think even if we're positive, we still need the tools that I have learned that I didn't have access to manage our mind.
Yeah. So one of the things that was true for me, Rachel, is that I spent my teenage years and my 20s feeling like I didn't matter, and life was harsh, and God hated me, like all of the above. And I started studying psychology in my late 20s when I was 29. And that began to open my eyes to the possibility that we actually can change how we think if we change habits of behavior and habits of thought, right? So that was my first sort of epiphany that, wow, I don't have to be this way. So I've been practicing practices that support a more optimistic and balanced way of seeing life for 30 years now, for actually 31 years, I'm 60. And the beautiful thing along the way is it is practice. It is effortful, especially for people like us who might be natural pessimists, or any perfectionists, recovering perfectionists in the group. Yeah, it's effortful. However, it was also effortful to wake up miserable every morning and not trust the world, not trust other people, and feel like the next blow was going to come at any moment, right? That there's effort in protecting and defending oneself in that way too. The beautiful thing about this effort, these practices of habits and tools and perspectives, is that over time, I actually am far more at peace. I can transition much more quickly from negative, jumping to conclusions, catastrophizing, to a more balanced point of view. And like with Caroline, a little more hope. I could take a step that moves me toward hope. So I have more energy, more vitality. And then I'm able to actually do the thing I'm here to do in the world, whatever that is, whether it's teach or parent or just make a good meal, right? So yes, you can be. It won't change everything about you. It will change much if you're willing to put the effort in.
Yeah. And I love that it's a long game. I have a question for both of you. I want to make sure we get in, which is that, when we started this, how many years ago?
The company was started in 2013, but our first SIP program, we started planning for it in 2010 and 2011. We started it in 2012. So I think that's about right, time-wise.
Yeah, mindfulness has become more of our culture, and there is more awareness of this, the importance of this. And what do you feel like is the primary message now about this program that makes it different than maybe some other programs? I mean, I know the answer for me. I just feel like in some ways, the more we know, the more we need practices, right? It's like I know it intellectually, but what's the Spire model gave me was how to embody it, how to practice it in my relationships, how to look at it from a more holistic point of view. But I wonder what you guys feel like the difference is. Oh, we knew this, or we thought it was going to be about this when we first started. Mm-hmm. But now that we've trained X number of people and been in it, it is that and more, or is it different at all?
Yeah, I think that also speaks to the differentiator. Like, why is this program different? And I'll just point out a couple of what I think of key things, and you touched upon them, but just to draw them out explicitly, is one is the social components of the small group work. We have very intentionally over the years set up what is the process by which an individual learns within the construct of small groups, within the construct of a larger cohort, within the construct of the larger community. That has been intentionally built, intentionally and deliberately elevated, because the connection point of the learning is so often we think we're not living well because we haven't got it right, we haven't done it right, we're not doing the process, and we forget the huge impact that our ecosystem has on how we develop. So that is an integral part of it. The second differentiator is the applied practice. There is no grade at the end. There is no right or wrong. There is a lived experience of embodied practice over time that keeps spiraling in an upward positive way. So the combination of a connected network and a positive upward spiral of continual practice means that we have sustained change over time. We are constantly growing out into ourselves in a way that's makes it a little bit better today, I guess is how I would put it. Maria, would you add anything else to that?
I'm sorry, Megan. I was responding to Mahesh, who's up at 2 in the morning.
Good morning.
2 in the morning
Hello, Mahesh.
To be with us. And so I'm sorry, I have nothing to add.
Well, I think we'll leave it at that, those 2 points.
Yeah, well, but I want to add that what this gives, which is a human need, is community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why our 2 organizations have partnered so beautifully together. Also, we had a question about speaking to cost and also if there were scholarships available. And so are there any any financial ways to finance that? So, or do they need to talk with someone?
Yeah, so the price is $3,500, although I think it's supposed to go up to $3,800 this month. So it's standard is $3,800. If you want the early bird at $35, that's currently up. There are
$100 off if you
plus your $100 off. That's right. There you go. So it'd be $3,400 with the JCC coupon. There are generous payment plans. I think the longest we can do the payment plans are for six payments. So it can be broken out over a longer period of time. And we do have scholarships available if needed. There is a form on our site, and we always do. We're generous with our scholarships as well. I'd also just like to point out that I realize that asking questions in this setting isn't always comfortable. So I'm actually, to all of you, just going to make the offer. If you want to speak to me personally, I have office days on Wednesdays, and you can set up a time to talk with me directly with my calendar right there in calendaring. Let's see, Gloria.
Yeah, Megan, Gloria has this beautiful reflection which points to a central learning of the course, which is it helps us shift our experience of living toward a stance of really devoted personal leadership, meaning I have choice every day where I put my thoughts, what I do with my feelings, and where I move, what actions I take. And Gloria, thank you so much for this reflection of, I know there are tools that I can use, and I can look at my notes, realizing I can choose to feel energized and inspired at any given moment by reminding myself of the tools available to me, right? This puts us firmly in a stance of personal leadership in our lives.
And I think that for me, one of the things that I'm always looking for as a learner, as an educator, as a leader, as a human, is that I want to continually evolve into the kind of person that I know I can be. And this program or these tools or positive psychology, this introduction to this, resilience, it's like it's helping me, give me the foundation to evolve and grow into the kind of human that I want to be and that I am proud of. And I want everyone to take it because I want you to have access to what I have. And also we can human better together. I'm an all for one for all kind of gal. So
human better together. That's like a good slogan. Human better together.
There's a t-shirt right there.
Yeah, there you go. So I love bringing, as my friend Joanne will say, if I find something, and everyone, I am that kind of professional. I try everything out on myself first, right, before I bring it to the JCC, and been here 17 years. So this is something that I do highly recommend, and I hope you will consider it if it calls to you. And I do think it's a calling, if it calls to you. And I thank you guys, for spending your time with me as always, and love you so much. And I am grateful because you are now in my life and a part of my life. And Maria has been a speaker on our Broadway Best for breast cancer, which has been so impactful. And Megan has helped out even on the operational level of the JCC with my team, in addition to all of this. So the level of generosity is huge. So I send you both a big giant hug. I can't wait until the final immersion. And I hope if this sounds interesting to any of you, that you will consider it. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Wonderful to be with you all today. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Take care. Be safe.
Take care.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
You can unmute and say goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.